Hi, I'm Eric Ostro. Live at the Lortel is about to start. For Season 2, While Theaters Are Dark, we are discussing with our guests their thoughts on the reckoning the theater community is facing for systemic racism and their vision for the future of the American theater. To broaden our perspective, I am sharing my platform with co-hosts from the BIPOC community. We offer these conversations to help us learn and to start the healing process. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Live at the Lortel. My name is Eric Ostro, and I will be one of your hosts this evening. I want to get right to it, so I want to bring on my beautiful, incredible friend, Joy D. Michelle. Joy, come join me. Hello.
Hello, Eric. How are you?
You look lovely, as always.
Thank you. Thank you. And so
always a joy to see you. We had a long day today, you and me, so
we have
a lot of time together. But let's get right to it. I'm very excited to talk to our guest. Let's bring him right on. Let's welcome Marti Cummings. Marti, welcome.
Hi, how is everyone? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on this. It's Monday night?
Yes, it is Monday. We all tend to lose sight of the days.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, how are you since it's been almost a year? Where were you? How are you through this whole pandemic? Were you working on something? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, the last year has been,
yeah, I do. That's a good way to put it too.
It's been rough. It's been quite I can't believe it's been a year in this. There does feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's so much work that still needs to be done, right? Like, I'm a gig worker who works in nightlife and theater, and I know you all know a lot about theater, and our industry, the theatrical industry and the nightlife industry, has been completely decimated. And that doesn't only affect actors and musicians, but it affects wardrobers, costumers, stagehands, ticket takers, ushers, bathroom attendants, porters, bartenders, waiters, hotel workers, taxi drivers, baristas, street vendors. The list goes on and on and on and on. Carpenters, paint, it goes on and on. This impacts so many industries. Having theater shut down impacts so many industries. Yes. And so while, yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, vaccines are coming slowly. The rollout is not great, but we need to be looking towards how are we reopening safely, and how are we reopening in a way that's going to put money from the tourist revenue from this back into the pockets of the people. Not the necessary industry, the billion-dollar producers, but the people who have struggled for a year. Many people who haven't had access to unemployment because of their immigration status. A lot of the people who work in the nightlife industry behind the scenes might be undocumented. So they've had no relief whatsoever. So we need to make sure that we're prioritizing people in this. So it's been a long year, but this recovery is going to take a while, even with this light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm excited to have different ways of being creative, streaming services like this, reaching people in a new way. It's been quite the year.
Yeah, the other thing too, I think is so important is so many of our actor and artist friends didn't have enough days for them to get health insurance. So many of my friends just lost their health insurance and, nowhere to go, don't have the money to pay, $8,000-9,000 a month for health insurance when they lose it through their union. Insane.
Yeah. Well, my husband's a union artist, so we get that.
Yeah.
Thank
Marti,
God.
I'd like to ask you, with your I love all the people that you just represented by talking about all the people who are currently out of work, because it's so true. It's almost like the entire city of New York is out of work because it's all ran by the entertainment industry. For the work that you're doing, have you found that there's a lot of people who are mobilizing with you to bring awareness to what's happening? And are you seeing, because I'm in California, So I don't know what's going on out there right now. Are you getting a lot of support?
Yeah, well, I will say, there's a couple different groups who are doing a lot of great work around this. The Local 802 Musicians Union has been doing incredible work trying to support artists with the Music Workers Alliance, the Freelancers Union, the New York Hospitality Alliance, the League of Independent Theaters. These groups have done a lot of work to IATSE Local 1, which is the Stagehands Union.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing a lot of great work to try to support and help artists, but also just seeing our community come together. I'm a drag artist who works in bars and restaurants primarily. Every now and again, I got a little theater gig, but primarily in nightlife. But seeing our community rally together to find ways to help one another, to do online shows, to support each other. It's shown that we are a community, like artists rally together to help one another. But I think it's important. We're talking like the Super Bowl was last night at the time of that we're live, right? So
Yes.
This is okay. So the Super Bowl was last night. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes on like podcasts and stuff, you need to be like at the time of this recording.
No. Today is Monday.
Yeah. So the Super
Tom
Bowl
Brady won last night. Correct.
Yeah. Whatever, Super Bowl, blah blah blah. But like we put so much into like that, which of course, like there's people who are working. There's a lot of union workers, a lot of people who are employed through stuff like that. But we so often forget that our theater community, our arts community, our nightlife community, are that's what we rely. Like, yes, sports is fun, and there are great jobs within that we need to be prioritizing also. But what do we do when we are sad? We put on our favorite record. What do we do when we're happy? We put on our favorite record. Mm-hmm. What do we do when we want to celebrate? We go see a show, or we go to a bar to hear music. Or if we're having a romantic encounter, we go to dinner and hear a band play, or we go to a museum to look at art. Our entire lives are centered around the arts. So why is this the industry that is so often the one that's the last to be thought about in any recovery process? Even before the pandemic, we're always the last ones. We're the first thing to get cut in schools. Yep. We're the first thing to be said, oh, it's not important. But it's our entire existence is centered around it. So,
yeah, I read an article where somebody was talking about if you look at the salaries of people who are in the administrative part of theater, that they're making so much more money regularly than the performers do themselves. So it would be, wonderful to see these different organizations really take note and want to give artists the kind of respect that we deserve, because most artists are going from gig to gig and not having a regular job that kind of keeps you going, where you've got that regular W-2 that comes at the end of the year. So there is not a lot of concessions for things like a pandemic when that comes up. So I'm so thrilled and so happy to see the work that you're doing to bring awareness to all of this.
Thanks. I mean, it's so stressful. So many people outside of our industry are living. Most people in this country are one paycheck away from like financial ruin. And we've seen that in this pandemic, like we're all literally one paycheck away. And then you live in a city like New York, which I love. I would never want to call anywhere else home. This is where I want to spend the rest of my days. I love it. But we have a city that's increasingly for the wealthy. So when you have people who, are living paycheck to paycheck, and then are in industries, whether it's theater or another job that's reliant on gigs, that, like carpenters, some years they have a ton of buildings to work on, and some years they don't, so their income fluctuates. Then you throw a pandemic in, and it's impacted much more. So, but a lot of times we don't have the opportunity to have a savings account because we have family or rent that's so astronomical. So we need to be thinking about a $15 minimum wage is great if you live in Montana or Nebraska,
Kentucky, etc.
But in New York City, $15 isn't enough. Chicago, $15 isn't enough. Atlanta, $15 isn't enough. So we need to be looking at raising the minimum wage, but raising it based on where you live, So we need to be looking at universal basic income for families that make less than a certain amount of money, so they can have support.
Which takes me to my next. I mean, I know your story. I've delved into your life on the internet over the past week, and it's been fascinating to me. Marti, you came to New York to you wanted to be an actor, right? You wanted to do musical theater, and then you segued into drag. But it's incredible to me where your turn came into going into politics, and that's what I want to talk about, and that's what I want to focus on today.
Sure.
So how did it? I mean, where did that happen? Where did the turn kind of come in your head, and you were like, oh, you know what? This is my calling. This is why I'm here.
Oh man. How do I want to answer that?
Well, Marti, let me just say this while you're getting that thought together. As I started to look at your story, what I love so much is that so many of us will complain about things and be concerned about things, but it sounds like you have picked it up and decided, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not just going to complain about it. I want to take action. So tell us what made you want to take that kind of action.
Sorry, my dog was just jumping on me. So that weird movement was me moving my dog.
Better question, Joy. Thank you.
I think I'm a big believer in. I feel like a lot of times people feel. I'm speaking like very generally. I feel like a lot of times people feel like their voice doesn't matter or won't be heard, and it doesn't make a difference. But I'm a big believer that we live in this age of social media where everybody's like, I have to have 1 billion followers to be relevant, but that's not true. Whether you have 1 follower or 100 million, you have an opportunity to engage with people about issues that are important. And so even if you're influencing 1 person to do something good, you've made a difference in the world. And that's a big deal. So I think we need to get away from this notion that like only people with platforms can do something. And so for my experience, for my own personal, because everyone's experience is different. So now going from the general to my own experience, I moved to New York when I was 17. So I was like a baby, and I'm 33 now. So my entire like adult existence has been in New York. I really feel like I grew up in New York because 17 and 33 are very different.
At least we hope.
At least we hope. Yeah, right. I mean, some people, yeah. Anyway, some people still act like it. But, it's very different. So I've had a very complex existence in this almost 16 years. I moved to New York 2 weeks after graduating high school. I wanted to be a musical theater actor. I love the stage. I've always loved the stage. I've always wanted to live in New York. And I like kind of accidentally became a drag queen, and that became my full-time job for over a decade. And then through that, like a lot of people, when, Trump happened, I wanted to like avoid his name tonight, but when that whole mess happened a couple of years ago, which was not like random, he was a symptom of a virus that has been a part of our country since before our country was founded. He just gave permission to people to finally say out loud the bigoted crap that they've always thought. He gave people permission. Correct. So it's a symptom. But when, I heard him on the escalator say all the BS that he said, I was like, oh, that's really scary. You're making me as a voter feel uncomfortable. So I said, oh, so are you profiting off of queer people and voting against their existence? And he didn't really like that question. So I quit on the spot. And as I was walking away to another bar to move my show, which I did in the same night, move my show to another bar because I'm a crafty queen and I got to pay my bills. But as I was walking to the other bar, I thought to myself, well, you had people in your audience, and even if you were saying it in a joking way, something like some kind of light bulb had to go off, either as a young queer person hearing somebody on a microphone stand up for them and be in their corner, or as somebody who was possibly, I don't know if there were Trump supporters in my audience that night, but if you are, maybe you reckon the issues you're voting against might have been humanized in that moment, and you could have said, oh, maybe I'm wrong. And I realized I had an opportunity because of my drag platform that I was given to do something more. And so I started getting really plugged in local politics. And now here we are running for city council, which I never thought would happen. But it's important because representation matters. You know, the LGBTQ caucus and city council is all term limited, and they're all cis gay men. Nothing against them. They're all wonderful guys, but we've never had trans representation or non-binary representation in city council. So my friend Alessa Crespo is a trans woman of color who's running for city council in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. I'm the first non-binary candidate to be running for city council. And that's a big deal because those voices have never been heard at the table. So it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. I mean, it's so progressive, and it's I give you so many props for wanting to do this and want it. But what was really the catalyst for you to want to run for city council? What is it about city council that lit your fire?
Well, city council, I mean, it's different in every city. I know LA city council, you guys only have like 20 something members, right? Like, I think that's right, like 25 or 26. I could be wrong on that number. And their city council, like each district is like 200,000 or 300,000 people. It's like a crazy amount. It's like the size of a congressional district. It's like crazy. Yeah. But like my district that I'm running in has 141,000 people, that's a lot of people. But the city council is a big deal because in New York City, we have a 51-member city council. And the city council has a huge say in the budget, which is $92 billion. It's a lot of money. And they have a lot of say in zoning. And right now, zoning is happening in a way to benefit developers and super rich people, which displaces people from their homes, displaces small businesses, restructures an entire neighborhood or community. And so we need to have zoning that's reflective of the needs of the community. And we need to have zoning that's reflective of providing housing for everyone. We need to have zoning that's equitable and not, I don't want to curse on this. Yep. I think you're muted.
You can't. I'm sorry. I was saying you can curse 1 or 2 times is perfectly fine.
I had to stop myself. I'm here to represent the working people of the city who need a leg up. Jeff Bezos is doing just fine.
Can we say that again for the people in the back?
He makes $300 million a day. But meanwhile, people in our industry are
struggling.
They don't know how they're going to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Well, they can pay the bills.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. They absolutely can't.
You know, as a young person who's decided, because I still consider, I know you're saying 17 to 33 is a big difference, but that's still very young. So as a young person who's decided to take on these challenges, there are other people that I'm sure, want to do something too. But then they get scared. They're like, well, I don't know anything about politics. Where do I start? Where do I begin? Where do I plug in? Like, what advice would you give to those people who are thinking, I'm tired of complaining. I want to do something. Where did you start? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I didn't know anything. I didn't know shit about politics.
You just kind of learned on the spot.
I learned as I went. Yeah,
Right.
and I'm still learning. But that's the thing. Like, politics should be accessible to everyone. And in our country, for so long, it has been traditionally for cisgendered, wealthier, white, straight men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who has benefited greatly from everything in our country. So I didn't know anything.
So what'd you plug into? Did you call a friend? Did you go to the center? Did you what did you do to get started to go, I want to do something?
Well, I had friends who were in politics. You know, I had a friend of mine a few friends of mine who are on city council, just who I'd known over, you get to know people when you live in New York for a long time, and some of them go on to be on city council, whatever. So I knew people in politics, and so I would just ask a lot of questions, like, what, and then I just plugged in. So for people who might not have the leg up of knowing someone on city council to give them advice, ways you can get involved, whether you're in New York City or wherever you're viewing this from, find out what local organization, what are the local organizations in your area, whether it's the local Democratic Club or the local, there's so many. I mean, it depends. Like, there's so much it depends on what you want to do in politics. Democratic clubs help petition for people and phone bank for people and get out the vote for people and do forums on local candidates and stuff like that. And then, there could be like an immigration justice center where you live. Maybe that's what you want to advocate for, or maybe you want to work on halting solitary confinement and releasing seniors and nonviolent offenders from prison. So you want to get connected with a prison reform group, or maybe women's reproductive rights, is a big thing. So find out your local Planned Parenthood political chapter, or there's so many outlets you can go into, but a great kind of starting place to find all of these different areas is find out either your local Democratic club, or if you identify as a socialist, your local DSA member club, or I identify as an abolitionist, there's probably an abolitionist club near you. There's so many ways to be political. So that would be, I think, the first place to look. And also find out which candidates are running where you live and volunteer for them. Or find out who is your local representative. And if you don't like the things they're doing, hassle them, call them, email them.
Yeah.
On their, pages. Or if you like them, volunteer for their next campaign. Those are great ways to meet other people as well who can help connect you too.
So I wanted to say to our audience, please feel free to ask a question. You can type it in, and our executive producer will send me the question. So I have a question for you, Marti. It's crazy that sports fans and largely commercial performers can enjoy and profit from the Super Bowl. Why can't we have substantial outdoor performances in NYC given the incredible talent pool that we have?
Was that an audience question?
Yes, sir. Yes,
so,
sir.
Jimmy Van Bramer, who's an amazing council member who has endorsed our campaign for city council, he just recently passed a bill in city council that will start allowing outdoor performances in March, I believe it is, which is great. But we need to take it a step further. And so a plan that I have, because hopefully Broadway will come back sooner rather than later, but while we're waiting for that might not be until the fall or later. We know it's not going to be this summer. we know no matter what, it won't be this summer.
We just, correct. It'll be after.
So March or April through September or October is a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So our city needs to have contracts. Our city and our parks department have a lot of theater spaces, a lot of theater venues that are outdoors, where we can do socially distant outdoor performances. So the city needs to have contracts with our League of Independent Theaters, which is smaller theaters, with our Actors Equity, with Local 802, so we can do either small indie theater shows or something bigger like Lincoln Center, the Met, but we need the city to have contracts to allow these theater spaces in our parks to be utilized so people can go have ticketed events, so people can go to work safely.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very exciting. I have this question, and I think an audience, I think it's very important. Can you tell us a little bit about what being a New York City Council member entails and why it is such an important position?
Being a New York City Council, for a city council, is probably one of the most powerful governing bodies in this country, because our budget is $92 billion. Our budget is larger than some countries' budgets. Our police budget, which is way too big, is larger than some countries' military budgets. Like, what? So we have an opportunity. Like, the city council is important, not only because of budgeting, which we're talking about, and zoning, which we talked about earlier, but we also have one of the most segregated, we have the most segregated school system in our country. And School District 3, which is part of it is in my district, is the most segregated school district in the city, because the parent groups can say, oh yeah, we're progressive, we just don't want those kids coming to our school.
That's progressive, yeah.
But that's what it's NIMBYism, right? It's the same as when we have people experiencing homelessness and we try to get them housing, and people say, oh yeah, get them housing, but over there.
Right.
Right.
So city council has an opportunity to change this stuff, but we need leadership willing to do it. And in this primary on June 22nd, we have an opportunity, because of term limits. There's term limits in the city government. We're going to have a new mayor, and we're going to have a new comptroller, and we're going to have new borough president, and we're going to have, out of the 51 council members, 35 of them are term limited. So that's a brand new council. So we need people who are willing to stand up and do the morally right thing and not backpedal, and hold our elected accountable to say, well, you said this when you were running, so do it. Or at least try to do it, So city council is important because there's 9 million people, probably more, but 9 million people who live in New York City, and we can work to make change here on the city level, work with our legislators in Albany to make change, and then people pay attention to what happens in New York City and in Albany. So if we make really progressive change here, that's going to influence other cities to go ahead and do it. We're being outshone by Austin, who just defunded their police department and put that money back into community to house the homeless. We can do that here. We have so many vacant buildings in this city that the city can put people in for housing, not shelters, but housing, giving people an opportunity to live, get them housing, fund social services, fund addiction services, Fund mental health care services, because everybody experiences housing insecurity for a different reason. So house people, find out why they're experiencing homelessness, and then get them the help and the resources they need. And I'm so tired of people saying it can't be done. With $92 billion, yes, it can. We're just funding the wrong shit.
Right, right.
I have a question. Sorry, Joy, and then I know you have a question, but another audience question for you, Marty. How do you think we can get more government funding for the arts in the schools that we're talking about? And would that be in the realm under the umbrella of your position?
Yeah, arts education is so, me as a little queer child who needed an outlet. But arts education is not, like, yes, it was helpful for me as a queer child, but arts education helps everyone, it helps everyone and should be accessible for everyone, because a lot of kids might not know that there's something they're passionate about. A lot of kids may not know that they like pottery, or they may not know that they like painting or graphic design on the computer, or, singing or playing the drums or whatever. A lot of people, they might not know, maybe their art is building, construction, carpentry. Maybe, that we need to fund that in schools too. The trades, they used to have in schools all the time, the home ec trade stuff, they don't have that anymore.
Right. And carpentry and right. Home ec and all that stuff.
Because everybody has different passions. We should be providing that in schools. And so what we can do is really allocate budgeting, which goes back to budgeting, what we were talking about earlier. We can fund these programs in schools, and we can also fund after-school programs, summer programs, and then with discretionary funding from each city council member has discretionary funding and participatory budgeting, or participatory funding as well. We can fund nonprofits in our districts that provide these services outside of the schools also. But there's no reason this can't be in school. We're funding police in schools. Why can't we fund arts in schools?
Absolutely right. And it's always the first thing cut, right?
Yeah, our priorities are very skewed. And so we need to rethink and reshape and reimagine what we can do. And it can be done. We just need people to be loud about it and say, I want arts education, but not just say it, but call their representatives, find candidates who are going to commit to that.
And it's not only the city council people and everybody that you're going to work with, because you are going to work with them, but it's all of us opening our mouths and calling and emailing and saying, this is what we want. We need this. Our voices can be heard.
Let's fund, theater is so expensive now. Let's have the city, let's put through a program where we can get, I know there already is a program like this, but let's expand it where we can give kids in our public schools access to theater for free. Let kids see shows. Let kids go to museums and experience art,
You've been very active out in the forefront doing a lot of different things that is making an impact on society right now. And one of the things that I recognize that you've done is you did a lot of work with defunding the police and being an activist in the way of protesting and so on and so forth. Can you speak to, there's a lot of people who get confused about defunding the police. And I know that you have a very large platform and there's a lot of young people that follow you as well. So can you make that clear for people to explain what that really means?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people are turned off by the term defunding the police. I am not turned off by it. But if you're turned off by, if me saying defund the police gets you all prickly might not be a nice word, but it makes you feel a little away. Look at it as, I'll use New York's budget. We have a $6 billion police budget, which is actually, with pensions and lawsuits and overtime, closer to $11 billion. We spent in the last fiscal year $600 million in police overtime, and we, the taxpayers, are paying for lawsuits against police when
Brutality.
Lawsuits, brutality, all that kind of stuff.
So why are we paying for that? That should come out of their pension. That should come out of their money. You did this, you pay for it. Why are we paying for it? So when we talk about defund, we should look at it as we should be reinvesting in the communities that are most impacted by police violence. And we have to look at it as police violence is very real. The PBA, the Police Benevolent Association in New York, endorsed Donald Trump. So everything we're seeing on camera now has been happening for years. We're now seeing it on camera in real time. So we have to take action and say, okay, why do we have a $6 to $11 billion budget when our arts education programs are cut? Why do we have that budget when our sanitation department has been cut? When our transportation budget has been cut? The Summer Youth Employment Program, which helps 75,000 kids, primarily Black and brown kids, with jobs in the summer, was cut. So that's what we're saying. Reinvest. Put that money into housing. Put that money. Not every 911 call needs to have 25 cops showing up who don't know what to do except for pointing a gun. Put that money into social services, mental health care providers who are trained for mental health care situations, addiction specialists who are trained to help and handle people who are experiencing addiction. Put it into child services, put it into homeless services and food services, So when you have a budget that's inflated, we just got to bring it back down so things are equitable. It's not equitable right now. We should be funding counselors in school, not armed police who are going to tackle a 9-year-old girl and pepper spray her. We need social workers who can see that there's something going on with the kid, find out what it is, and get them the help and the support they need. Maybe a kid's acting out because there's something happening at home and they need a little help. So our priorities are way off base here. So that's what we're saying. We need to reinvest in our communities.
You've been very, very open about your past struggles with, and I hope it's okay to talk about with alcohol and
I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, and addiction, and I think I truly think with struggles with your addiction, and you just put it out there in the world, and I think this definitely helps people relate to you on another level. Can you talk about a little bit about, and you touched on it before, about getting real counselors out there to help people with addiction and to not throwing them in jail for this, and getting them the help that they need. You can talk about it firsthand because you've been there, and you've been sober a long time. But yeah. I think your story is fascinating. But I would love to hear what your idea is about moving forward and what your plan is to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the lucky ones, right? Like, I got sober. It will be 10 years next month, which is
congratulations. That's 10 years, amazing.
I can't believe it. I am an alcoholic and drug addict in every sense of the word. And sometimes people, as a candidate, people are kind of like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a drug addict. Okay, what about it?" I, by the grace of a God of my own understanding, which everyone's experience to recovery is different. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the lucky ones. I would not be alive today if I didn't get sober. I would not be here today, whether from an overdose or getting hit by a car or suicide. I would not have made it. Mm-hmm. So thank God I got sober. Some days are better than others, but for the most part, we're doing pretty good. But not everybody has an experience. And we have to remember that this is a disease. And I can't tell you how many political meetings I sit in on, and I hear the way people talk about people experiencing addiction, where I'm just like, hi, okay, I'm going to step in here. Do you think I look like an addict? Do you think, and oh, no. I'm like, well, I am. You know, you don't know someone's struggle. You don't know what someone's been through. And the disease of addiction is a disease, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or money or overeating or starving or over shopping. What
Addiction is addiction.
it comes in so many different ways. And it is a disease. So why are we criminalizing a disease? If somebody says, I've got diabetes or I have cancer, we don't throw them in jail. We say, well, let's get some help. Let's get you some help. Let's get you your insulin. Let's get you your chemotherapy. So we're throwing people's lives away, and this primarily impacts Black and brown and immigrant communities, because those are the communities that are over-policed. And you're throwing someone's life away instead of saying, oh my goodness, okay, you're on drugs. Well, instead of spending $300,000 a year on putting you in jail, which is like what it costs, we're going to spend some money to get you into some rehab. And when you're done this rehab program for either 30 or 60 or 90 days or whatever it takes, we're going to ask you, okay, do you want to go to college? Is that the plan that you want? If you want to go to college, we have to make the City University of New York free, because it was free 40 years ago, and then the city wanted to make some money. We have the resources in this city to have CUNY be free, City University of New York. So put these folks who have gone through this program through school. College isn't for everyone. You don't want to go to college? What is something you're passionate about? What is something that you want to do? And this goes back to the trades we talked about. So let's build relationships with our unions to set up specialized apprenticeship programs. But there is a small program like this in the city, but let's expand our relationship as a city government with our unions and their apprenticeship programs to allow people who have gone through these rehabilitation programs to get an apprenticeship, to get a job, to give them access to the middle class, which is going to help them with a long-term sustainable job that's not only going to impact their life, but it's going to impact their kids' life and their kids' lives, because it will build, it's generational. So instead of throwing somebody's life away at $300,000 a year, let's give them a life where they can try to get sober and give them opportunities that they won't have by incarcerating them.
And maybe do something that they're passionate about. I mean, I think many addicts are addicts because they're not doing what they want to do, or they have no access to it. I think that's a brilliant idea. I love it.
With organizations like the Lortel, let's hire people in the theater, whether it's backstage or front of house or whatever. Let's build people. It's about self-esteem. It's about there's so much that's encompassed in it, but we're throwing people's lives away.
You touched on drugs and sober living and incarceration. So let me ask you, what's your, because I know one of your platforms, and if you can talk to it about decriminalizing marijuana use and also sex work. So tell us what that means for you.
Yeah, the Lortel Theater is going in tonight, okay?
We are.
We didn't.
That's why we're here. That's what we want.
Y'all showed up thinking we were going to talk about the Georgia McBride show.
No, ma'am.
Which is a great show at the Lortel. My friend Matthew wrote it.
Amazing show.
Great show. Love Matthew, dear friend. But we are diving in. So first of all, sex work is work. Sex work is work. And a lot of times people do sex work for a variety of reasons. Survival, income, or they just like it. Who cares? It is work. And oftentimes the folks who are targeted and incarcerated for sex work our Black and brown and immigrant communities, and more so our trans Black and brown and immigrant communities, which thank God they just in Albany repealed the Walking Well Trans bill finally. But we still need to decriminalize sex work. We also need to decriminalize and legalize marijuana, and we need to give access to when we do legalize and decriminalize and people can start selling it, we need to set up our campaign release the first ever, I think, reparations fund program that I don't think a city council has ever done that. We need to be giving opportunities to our BIPOC community so people can open small businesses, sustain small businesses. And part of that is when marijuana is decriminalized and legalized, the communities that are impacted the most by mass incarceration from marijuana need to be the first ones, the priority of who gets licenses and distribution rights. And they should be the ones who are making money off of this, not like some, white rich ass man who comes in and is like, I'm going to open all these dispensaries. No, let's give the first licenses the people who have been most impacted. And we need to release everyone from prison who is in jail for it and expunge their records and get them jobs in this industry.
Especially somebody that was just arrested for selling a small thing of marijuana. I mean, some of those people are in jail for years and years and years for that.
But meanwhile, these Wall Street guys are let out of jail in a minute.
Yeah, of course. I have a question from the audience. This is from Ken. I love your activism and compassion for others. If it's not too personal,
oh God.
Were you raised in an environment where family or friends were involved in this community, or is this something that you just brought on your own?
Oh, I have a complicated relationship with my family. I love my family very much. I grew up on a farm in Maryland, and my parents are lovely and did the best they could, and I love them. And my brothers and I don't really have a relationship with one another because we don't share the same values politically. And that's the experience, I think, of a lot of people in this country. There's people that we love very, very much who just don't align with our values. And so I have a good relationship with my parents. I don't have a great relationship with my brothers. And that's okay. Because family is I love them very much, but I also have a family that's been chosen that I align with spiritually, politically, emotionally. And I can show up for family that I don't always agree, like blood family that I don't always agree with. I'll always show up for them and I'll always be there for them. But I don't have to give myself to them fully or feel bad when I need to put boundaries because I feel uncomfortable. It's okay to put up boundaries. And I think a lot of people in this country deal with that. A lot of there was that great story of that young girl who called the FBI on her mom. She saw her mom at the Capitol and had to called
her out, right?
That was probably, I don't know her full story, but I imagine that's probably very emotional thing to say, oh, what the hell is my mom doing? And have to call the FBI. So I was raised by two parents who taught me to love everyone unconditionally, that all people are created equal. And for some reason, my brothers took a different political path, and that's okay. That's on them, and I wish them well. And I have chosen siblings here in the city who I love very much.
That's our family that we choose. It's the family that we choose. Our circle is what we choose. You were extremely vocal and right in the trenches for the Black Lives Matter protests. I was following you on Twitter, and you were right out there in the middle of it and helping raise money to get people out of jail. You really blew me away with with the work that you did during the protest and the money you were raising to get the people that were being arrested out of jail. We need to talk a little bit about that experience and being right in the center of it and what you did to help.
Sure. How do I answer this? So I fully recognize that, you know, I am a queer, non-binary person who has had unusual experiences with other human beings because of that. But I also recognize, because of the color of my skin, I could take off my eyeliner and put on a baseball cap and pass in a crowd without anybody. I can pass as like a cis white guy and be fine. So I have to recognize, as a white person, as a white ally, that there have probably been times in my life that I might have said something that I would be horrified that I said. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're conditioned as white people to not recognize when a microaggression happens or not recognizing something is offensive. So
Totally agree.
So I personally have really made it a point to, in the last couple of years, really take the time to pause and listen to my Black and brown friends. And if I fuck up, own it, amend it, and learn to do better. We're all going to make mistakes. But if you're not willing to grow from it, then you're contributing to the problem.
Yes.
So when the summer happened, you know, it's like I said earlier, this stuff has been going on. We just have cameras that show us when people are being murdered now. But this has been going on since before our country was founded. Our country is built on stolen land that was built by people stolen from their land. And people who look like me have profited from it. So now we need to show up and truly be allies and listen and learn and grow and amend. And so when all these protests and marches happened, we have to take to the streets. How many people are going to be murdered before we, like, it was just Sandra Bland's birthday yesterday. You know, she should be alive. But she's not, because systemic racism has allowed her to be murdered. And it will just be another news story that we move on from. So, yeah, protesting was a no-brainer. I was arrested, but I also recognize I was arrested and I was able to go home the next morning. But we're taking to the streets because how many people have encountered the police and they don't get to go home? So, yeah, I have a lot to learn still, and I hope to continue to learn. And I think every white person should take the time to learn and not put that burden on our Black friends, but to do the work to learn.
But you are doing the work. I mean, we can do that. And I commend you for it, and I applaud you for it, and which is why I think you are a wonderful politician, and why you need to take this, why you will be on city council. If I'm gonna open my mouth to make sure you are.
Thanks. It takes each of us working together. It's a collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, they say when you know better, you do better.
That's a Miss Maya Angelou, yes.
Yes. And so, you know, you are doing the work to learn and to listen, and that goes on both sides of the aisles. Everybody who encounters people that don't necessarily look like them, but lead their lives with a good heart, need to take the time to learn more about each other so that we can make things better, period, for everybody. As
Yes.
the kids say, period.
On period. Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I also think it's Joy has told me, you know, I don't want to hear from my white friends, you know, when this was all going on, a text from one of my white friends that say, oh my God, what the heck is going on? Like that's not the thing to text to your dearest friend who is of color. That's not. It's having conversations and trying to affect change, which is what you're doing, which is what we're all trying to do, which is why we're having this conversation today, to help try to have a conversation, to help heal, to help move on. I have another question from the audience, from Esther Rhodes. There are so many issues to tackle, Marti. What will be your first plan of action when you are elected? And I say when you are elected.
Oh man, I mean, there's so many things. COVID recovery for our small businesses and for the industries we're talking about is obviously at the top of the list. But on a broader scale, I'm really excited because I know so many other candidates are excited about this too. But I want to have a 3-part Green New Deal: a Green New Deal for our city as a whole, a Green New Deal for our NYCHA housing, which is our low-income housing, and a Green New Deal for our public schools. So a 3-part Green New Deal, which will build long-term sustainable union jobs, and these jobs should come from the community. You know, so if we're working on NYCHA housing, or we're working on a water plant, or updating buildings, or the school system, then those unions should hire for those projects from within that community and give people long-term sustainable union jobs that are going to set them up for life. It will help combat climate change at the local level. Right now, we have 7 years to figure out climate change, but we can start doing it here in New York City. There was a plan that was put through a couple of years ago that said, okay, in 2023, we're going to take all this data and evaluate, and then by 2029, we're going to do this, and then by 2050, we're going to start. It's too late. It's too late. So we need to have a 3-part Green New Deal here in the city. It will stimulate the economy. It will give people jobs. It will give people access to the middle class, and it will update the infrastructure of our housing and our schools and our city at large to make us one that is green, environmentally friendly, and working to alter the climate crisis. And by doing that in our city, I hope that influences other cities and states to do the same thing.
And for our listeners, how do we help you get elected?
Oh my goodness. We do phone banks and text banks every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and we do lit drops on the weekends as well. So we need help. So you can go to our website, martiformanhattan.com, MARTI for Manhattan.com, sign up to volunteer. Yeah, it's super fun. We have a good time.
So, Marti, what I'm going to do is I'll reach out and you'll get me that information, and I'll put it right up on our website.
Oh yeah,
so when
the little chat right here.
That'd be great, and we'll put it on our website as well, because I think it's very important for New Yorkers to hear Marti's platform, to hear what the changes that he wants to make in New York, and to have our first non-binary city council member. So we want you, Marti. We need you. New York needs you very badly.
Thanks. Oh my God.
The world needs you. With that, the hour has flown by.
An hour? Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, but we've learned so much, and so grateful for you to be on the show and to break it down for us, because I think a lot of people just don't know. And
thank you both so much, and I'm so jealous of the LA warm weather. Oh my gosh, enjoy that.
Well, that is our show. I'd like to thank our amazing guest tonight, Marti Gould Cummings. Next Monday, February 15th at 7 p.m., John Andrew and I will interview Michael Potts, who just appeared in Netflix's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And then on Monday, February 22nd at 7 p.m., Joy and I will be speaking with 2-time Pulitzer-winning playwright, Lynn Nottage, and we are so honored that she is making time in her schedule to be with us. I am obsessed with Lynn Nottage. And so is Joy. If you enjoyed our show, please like the video, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Thank you so much again to our guests. Thank you, my dearest friend in the world, Joy. Thank you to our guests that came today. Get out, help Marty, phone banks, like he said. Marty put it, it's martyformanhattan.com. Get out and help this guy get to the top of New York so he can make some changes and make New York a better place, because I truly feel with you, New York will be a better place.
Thank you, my love.
Thank you all. Good night. Have a wonderful evening. Please stay safe. Wear your masks, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.